I'll hit record and I will let you introduce yourself and we'll go ahead and get fired up.
Right, sure, thanks. I want to thank you, Matthew, for the opportunity, and then FlipTech. We were talking about before everybody got in here, this is one of my first presentations outside of my district that I've done. I've started applying for instructional coaching positions, and one of the things that I'm finding is that they like you to have some experience doing some of these things. So it was funny. A few months back, I kind of made the decision I wanted to start presenting, and I'm part of the third chat, hashtag third chat on Twitter. And one of the participants there, I think, who was moderating, Angela, she moderates some of the FlipTechs. I had put on the slow chat that I was going to start looking at presentations to do, and she had put on the slow chat that they were calling for presenters. And I'm like, well, okay, this is probably a big sign that I should at least submit something and see what happens. So I, again, want to thank you for that opportunity. I actually teach elementary, so I'm going to try not to be intimidated by the middle and high school crowd here. But I teach elementary school. I have done that for about 18 years now, mostly third, fourth, and fifth grade, mostly third grade in that. And then we were a school up until about 5 years ago. Our campus actually had about 650 kids on it because we had the Center for Creative Learning, like a talented and gifted center was part of our campus. But they moved them off. So we're actually about right around 500 or so. I'm one of 4 fourth grade teachers. We fluctuate usually between 4 or 5 sections per grade, and I've been never have I been in a grade less than 4 and on a team less than 4, and usually, like I said, between 4 and 5 of us. And I've been doing fourth grade for about 3 years now, and I don't really feel like, or this will be my 3rd year, I don't feel like I know how to do it because first year was the end of it was COVID starting, and this year was all virtual up until March, where I taught 6 kids in person and 12 kids online all at the same time, or at least I attempted to do that and tried to do it as best I could. And I know everybody was in similar or very same kind of boats, obviously not the same situations, but one of the things that I did use during that time, I'd used it before, was Polypad. And so I decided, didn't think a lot of people knew about it, something worthwhile presenting. So you are all here, thanks for coming. There is a Pear Deck, if you'd like to join that, just to go through a quick presentation. Most of this work that we'll talk about today is going to be hopefully driven by you. I do believe that that quote that bounces around a lot, that the smartest person in the room is the room, especially in this kind of setting, I hope is true, where if you were able to watch the pre-work video where I kind of just highlighted a few tools in Polypad, then the meat of this presentation, I hope, is going to be some ideas of how we might use it or how you might use it moving forward, how it might benefit students, because as I mentioned in the pre-work video also, I don't really believe the tool is what is the driving force. I believe it's the instruction or the pedagogy behind that tool and seeing how that tool might fit. So in the virtual world, especially that I was in, I was looking for something that I could get kids to do easily without 3 or 4 or 5 or 200 days of instruction on how to do the tool. And that would also give me some math feedback. And I tried a few others. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I know Whiteboard.fi was one that I tried, but everything I seemed to try had too many bells and whistles, or was too much of a drain on Wi-Fi and bandwidth and those kind of things for some of my kids. So Polypad popped back up and we used it, and I never had trouble with it. It did what I needed it to do, and it fulfilled a lot of content areas that I needed to hit, and I could just go back to that one tool. And I actually had students who were going to that on their own as a whiteboard. So anytime we needed to do or just a simple drawing, write out a problem, or any of those kind of things, I actually had kids going to that on their own. And
hey, John.
Yes.
Real quick, I'm noticing, because I get to see the backside of his presentation. I noticed there are 3 connected, but we got about 6 people in here. And so if anybody needs any help, if you could go back through real quick on how to get on the Pear Deck, that might help a few more folks get right into that Pear Deck.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and put that link. Thanks for the reminder. I was going to put that in there and I didn't have chat open, but I'll go ahead and put a link to that the chat.
Hey, yeah, great. The moderator could also put just join joinpd.com. And then when you get to joinpd.com, you just use the code GGTTMH, and you don't need to worry about spaces in that.
Correct.
Pear Deck will take care of that one as well. So there's their link, folks. Get online. I've already made my drawing, so we'll give everybody a chance to do their drawing.
Yeah.
And the good news is, John, we've got high school, middle school. We got a smattering, but I'm confident that every good teaching method in math came from third grade. And that's who I've actually spent most of this pandemic working with, is third grade teachers. I bring them the tech, they bring me awesome methodologies. Yeah. So regardless of the level that you teach, I'm excited to hear about the methods, because you're right, yeah. the tool is just a tool, So,
and actually, I'm excited to have so many middle and high school as well, because I think there's a lot of power, even in stuff that I didn't cover in the pre-work. Polypad is one tool. Mathigon actually has a lot of different things, and I've played around with a little bit, and there's a lot of stuff, I believe, for middle and high school. So as we look at this today, and then maybe have a little bit of time towards the end, I'm looking forward to hearing some of that. I've been intimidated by a few of the things because I don't know the math, because I don't teach that. I haven't taught it for a while. I haven't learned it for a while. So, but I know Mathigon does have a lot of great stuff for upper elementary, middle, and high school as well. So if you haven't been able to get on that Pear Deck, you can. It's not crucial, but if you want to walk through that. In the first slide, there's just a finish the drawing, just to kind of let you listen to me talk for a minute and have something to do. But we'll get started on the meat of this. And we'll take a look real quick at some of those drawings. Ooh, just for fun.
Yeah, you can tell where my head is. Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, like this nice sunrise coming up. Ooh, I like that. And then I tested this out yesterday. Mine ended up being some weird looking, supposed to have been a hamburger. I didn't actually do one today, but it was supposed to be a hamburger, and it turned out to be some weird looking scraggly face thing. So you guys are definitely the artists in the room and not me. But first thing that we want to look at, or I want to look at with you guys today, is just this idea of the Polypad. I'm again talking about it before, whether it's brand new to you, and or if now that you've been able to look at the pre-work, if you were able to do that, just to kind of get a feel. I'm glad Matthew asked about grade levels. I was planning on doing that as well, and I think I forgot as part of the presentation, but I'm glad we know where everybody's standing. But this kind of gives me an idea of maybe where people are, and kind of confirms some of what I thought, that that most people probably wouldn't be familiar with this. I think it's a tool that's under the radar. Like I was saying before, there's other math chat, whiteboard, there's a lot of different tools. I gravitated towards this one because of the simplicity of it. Like I said, in the virtual world, in the flipped world, whichever world we might find ourselves in come fall, being able to roll out a tool without any real instruction on how to use it, or very limited instruction, kind of was a plus. And I felt like that was one thing that Polypad had above some of those others. Not to put any of those down. See, Susan in chat said she loves Mathigon. So yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there separate from the Polypad that they have. They're starting to add more lesson plans and things, I feel, for elementary, but definitely some things for middle school and high school. So good. That gives us a feel for where we're at. So in the pre-work, if you were able to watch that, pretty simply just kind of showed you briefly a couple of the tools and then asked you to pause and reflect on how those might be used. And that's what I want this presentation to be, not me talking at you, but hopefully getting some interaction. We'll do a few of these on the Pear Deck where you'll be able to type in your answers, and then a couple I'll probably have you unmute and maybe share, and we'll be able to do that as well during the Pear Deck feature of it as well. But this way I'll have some written answers on how you could answer one or both of these, how you might use this tool as the teacher in your role, or how you might be able to use those with your students. So the first one I shared in the work was the fraction circles. They have the fraction bars as well. And if you played around with this at all, if you were able to look at it, there's a lot of tools in here. But the fraction circles as a teacher was an easy way for me to show equivalence when I wasn't sitting there with all the manipulatives in the classroom like I normally would have. And then thinking about students and how they might use that. So I'll give you a kind of a moment there to type anything in. If you want to come off mute and speak to that as well, I'm fine with that. And Susan, yeah, if you're on the phone, it's a little hard sometimes on Pear Deck to keep track of everything, but yeah, not a requirement that you be on there. You'll be able to see everything and hear everything.
Question.
Yes.
So I'm new to Pear Deck too. I'm a huge Desmos user. And that's how I kind of communicate with my kids. But on Pear Deck, when they're working on that screen with those manipulatives, do you have the ability to see each of them working on it, or is it more you drive the manipulation?
So on the PolyPad, if they're doing it, the only way you would see it is if they're virtual, you would have them share screen and then you could see what they're doing. And then if they're in classroom, you'd have to like look over their shoulder. But yeah, there is no, that is one of the features that are in some of the other that you can actually create a class. PolyPad doesn't have that yet. Like I said, it's a little more simplistic, which, I mean, if they're virtual, the easiest, and that's what I did a lot of the times with my class was, I was working in small group or even one-on-one or whatever it was. I would just have them share screen and I would be able to see what they were doing.
Okay.
Things that this had that was pretty easy to use, that PolyPad had that was easy to use for that same purpose was over here in the corner on the toolbar on the right side, there's a image and it was real simple. So my kids ended up putting their work on there and then we're able to download that image and then put it into a slide deck that we were working in so I could see it in real time, in somewhat real time, or add it.
So they could, you know, I could offer up a problem. They could create their image and copy that image to drop somewhere.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see if I can draw into it here. Yeah, this button right here on the side of the tools, it's real simple. They click it, it downloads the JPEG, and then they could drop it anywhere. I didn't do that as much with my kids last year just because of the nightmare that was COVID instruction in some respects. But this year moving forward with kids in the classroom, I think my use would be, if it was something that they were turning in, to have them do that, where I would create a separate slide deck with every kid having their own slide, and they would be able to put this in there. There are some things you can do in slides where they can do some of this work anyway with images and things, but all the work is right here. It's really easy. There's no big learning curve on it. And then they click one button, they download it, and then they're able to plop it in. And then I would be able to kind of see from my desk all that work. Same thing if I was virtual, I guess this year again, I would probably have that same option. We used Canvas as our LMS and it was new to us. So we were really turning it via Canvas. And I think it would be a lot simpler just to do a quick picture on here and then drop it into a slide deck or however it might be. And
another thing I did a lot last year was Padlet. I know people think of Padlet more as a language tool or for science and social, all those others, but you can, in Padlet, you can just say, hey, I want everyone to pop in and drop your image. And so then the kids can see everybody's images and you could see their images all in one place. So it just another quick one-stop shop to see something.
Yeah, Pear Deck, I'm sorry, not Pear Deck. What did you say? I just went blank on
Padlet.
the one. Yeah, there's too many P's here. Padlet I really love too. I kind of got out of using that one when it went to a fee-based. But yeah, anything that you could get kids to add to the picture to, it's a real simple to mash that with the PolyPad to let them do the work there in a simple screen and then get that picture put up where, like you said, all the kids can see it. So that would be a definite way I think students could use this, where they could create their own answer or work and then be able to share that out. Go back to, I like this idea that shop ticket pockets. I agree that my kids drew a lot better on this. My kids did not have touch screens. they're doing trackpads and mice. And they even said that like writing in Zoom, on the whiteboard in Zoom was problematic. Writing on the whiteboard.fi and some of the others we used were problematic. But for the most part, using the trackpad and the mouse in PolyPad was actually more simplistic for them. They were able to easier draw what they wanted or to write what they wanted on there. Any other thoughts on how we might use the fractions, circles or bars or any of those, either in a flipped or in-person? Like I had said in the pre-work, one of the things I loved about it was the ease of teaching equivalence with the different shapes, and they lock into each other, so you can actually show 1/4 twice becomes 1/2 twice becomes 1 whole. We were doing mixed numbers, and again, in the real world classroom and in the setting, I have fraction circles on all the desks. But in the virtual world, couldn't do that. This was an easy adjustment to supplant that. I know most of us are middle and high school, so maybe fraction pieces aren't as necessary, but yeah, and again, that manipulation piece, the simplicity of manipulating this digitally versus what they were used to hands-on, I think translated really well. On to the next screen. I don't have anything for you to answer on this one, but did want to talk about this one again. This actually the tools and utensils, I think might be something more geared middle and high school. We use the ruler a little bit, we use the protractor a little bit. There's also the number line and then the coordinate system. So just want to toss this one out there. Where could you see the benefit of this part of PolyPad, maybe in your classroom, that whether it's the protractor, the ruler, or any of those systems that might be included in tools and utensils?
Yeah, Jen mentions constructions and geometry. So that is a really good tool to have there. The other thing I'm looking at is when we're doing like probability, having those dice, those digital manipulatives to roll, because as high school, I don't know about middle school, but a lot of times for high school, I don't have a lot of bins of stuff. If I go to elementary school classrooms, they got bins of stuff with all these things in them, and I don't have that stuff. So having a digital tool that each kid can participate with is a positive.
Yeah, and see in the chat, Jen, you mentioned it'd be nice if they had a compass. I remember those days of compass, but yeah, definitely the protractor is nice. Here, I think, again, whether it's flipped learning or it's virtual or it's in person, I know pencil and paper is easy, and if we have it, great, but having that virtual option of creating with the protractor was key for me in my role this past spring when we were trying to, how do you teach angles without having kids be able to see a protractor? So I use it as a teaching tool, but then it can also be used as a construction tool like that. And then to your point about the probability, really like that. There's several things out there in the world as far as tech tools go. I go back to the simplicity of PolyPad, plus from the randomization I've done with dice on here, it has seemed to be more random than some others, and that I've experienced where you don't keep getting the same number as often. I haven't done the spinners as much or any of the others, but I felt like you were getting that truer randomization, and even being in the classroom with littler kids, with younger kids, maybe having all the dice isn't always a benefit when they start flying around the room and things. So this could be a way to mitigate some of that. And we don't always have enough to go around either. We certainly don't have enough for every kid to run an experiment. So I think I'll actually go ahead and move to that screen. But if you wanted every student to be able to run an experiment in science or in math to collect data, the PolyPad is a great place for them to go. They have their die, they can set them out there. If they're doing spinners, they have coins, they have all kinds of different options. But now you have access, like you were saying, to resources where every student can run that experiment and collect their data, and now we have 23 or 25 or how many ever students are in your room, you have a bigger data source. So that would be one way I think here that the probability could be used, whether it's a science classroom or a math classroom. I wonder if anybody had popped over to Mathigon to the Polypad. Has anybody had any experience with the playing cards? Because that's another, I know, kind of big thing that nobody has 52 decks of cards for all their students and things, but I have not used that at all. So I was just kind of curious if anybody had played with that or seen that or was able to figure out a way that they might use those, or any of the other coins and dice and spinners.
I like the on the playing cards. I use that as basically a game. So instead of buzzers like a game show, I use dice, and high card wins, low card wins, and I let the kind of put them against each other. So I use cards quite a bit. I try to get the really large cards, but a nice digital card means they can do it right on the screen and right on the big touch screen at the beginning of the class.
Yeah, I didn't, like I said, I have not played around with this one very much. I do like this idea that you do have the deck of 52, so you can kind of move those around, and I do wish it was a single click to turn them instead of the turnover button, but yeah, different things for games. Again, elementary is my background, but selecting groups, this would be a way to have something set up to be able to do that, where they could go up and grab a card and find a way to do that. It would be another management kind of style. You have the option to pick different suits as well. Come in. I think this would be a harder piece to use from a probability lesson standpoint, but again, it might be something that students could use to show their thinking if they were using cards. But
Oh, yes, a war type game. I like it. But, another thing, John, is I like having students do student created videos, like demonstrations. So show me that if you randomize this, or show me if this card is drawn from a deck or whatever it is. The nice thing is you put this together with a screencaster. That means instead of a kid having to use a phone to record actual cards, or their Chromebook to record actual protractor use or whatever, they can manipulate that right on screen, and their screencaster should be able to record that for them. And so their explanation is basically putting a tool up on screen that they can use to explain to you that, no, when we use a protractor, we have to set the 0 on one side of the angle, and then we can measure to the terminal side, and they can point to it using drag and drops like this, or spinners, same thing. So putting that together with a screencaster really opens it up.
Absolutely. This is why I'm glad the room is the smartest person. I had meant to mention that before when somebody had asked about how do you see them working, like Flipgrid or WeVideo or Screencastify, any of those that are simple screencasting. Yeah, they can have that up, and it's the tool, the math tool itself isn't bothersome because Polypad is so simple to work with. The screencast is the hardest piece of the tool to use. Yeah, Jeremy and chat, Flipgrid would be perfect, where they get to explain. And I think that's a key to any of the tools we use, is especially in math, can we get the student explaining what they're doing? And one of the things I liked about, like you mentioned with the protractor, is you can see them, if they do the screencast, you can see them moving it, you can see them manipulating it, and then they're also talking through that as they're doing it. And of course, you can do the same thing with the cards, like you were mentioning. I like that idea as well. We're randomizing or picking a set, any that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely very workable with screencasting and getting those out there for you to see later, or if you're going even further for production, if they're doing, one of the things I've done with my students in the past was, especially for like map testing, state here in Missouri, we have the map test in late April. So one of our reviews is to create a lesson based on something that we did in the year where they go back into memory and they have to create a quick video or PowerPoint or whatever it is, slide deck, whatever they want to do. So this could be something simple for that as well, where if they're wanting to teach someone as a reminder of how to do something in math, this would be something to really set up easily with Flipgrid or something like that. So good, yeah, I like that. Or type game. Yep, definitely screencast to Flipgrid. Yep. Didn't set up anything in Pear Deck for this one. I thought this was one of the more simple of those tools, but again, we've alluded to it a few times. We talked about it a few times already, that having the manipulatives, the polygons that you're teaching younger kids especially, the names of them, they can label them, they can cut them. So there's some things I shared in the preview work about how to use these, but this was a great thing to have for the younger age group that I taught. We tried putting kits together hastily and throwing like blocks and base 10 cubes and all the stuff into the kits and sending them out. But we've learned really quickly that either kids weren't using those because they didn't know what to do with the box, or they were missing things. So this became an easy tool to just throw up there and say, we're going to be talking about hexagons and properties of those different polygons, and I could put those up as a teaching tool. I could record that, I could send it out to them. We could do it whole group, we could do it small group. They could also interact with them. When we started doing symmetry, there was ways to show symmetry and download that picture as an assessment tool or as a screencast, like we just said. So any other ideas that you might have? I know upper grades, high school, middle school, you guys do some different things with geometry and polygons than elementary, but
you know, something else I was thinking about here, I put it over in the chat, but for some of in the high school level, I teach some students that are operating at about that 5th grade level or 4th grade level. That's where they're functioning, and for a variety of reasons. And particularly those students that struggle with those executive functions. Having a digital tool just like this means there's an infinite number of triangles they can use. It's all organized here. And if they make a mess of something, you hit reset or you hit undo, and you can bring that frustration level down fairly quickly. It also allows them a fresh, open space to work that is uncluttered. So it does require some training for students to use these tools, but if you can have 1 or 2 tools that are your go-to tools for them, then they're allowed to put them together and use them without having to keep track of everything or shoving them in the binder or the folder or the book that looks like the Book of Monsters from Harry Potter, you know. So having some digital tools helps them keep a little cleaner and a little accessible.
Yeah, I agree. I was just, while you were talking there, kind of just showing if they make a quick mistake, they get the wrong shape, it's just a quick click and delete it. You can actually grab them all. So I think, like you said, anybody that's having trouble keeping things straight or organized or just hasn't learned that skill yet, perfect for that. Also, as far as some types of assistive technology where the dexterity may not be there to handle manipulatives, the smaller manipulatives, but if they have like a trackpad or a mouse that they can work with, that's a little bit easier. Again, another nice resource to have in the classroom just to make available, even if you're not using it on a normal basis for every student. The student who needs it, if they need it, then they should have it, kind of idea. You can cut them. That was another thing that kind of showed in that video, where you can have them show you like symmetry, cutting them, rearranging them, putting them together. You can do tanagram, although they do have, if I remember right, under the geometry, I think they already have some of those tanagrams and things like that. So we, in this brief dive into this, just wanted to show a few of the tools, but there's a ton in PolyPad that you can use these for in different settings, different content. And then one more. last one, yeah. So this one's just kind of a see what you're thinking about it. Just a fun. I've seen a couple of people do presentations, and they always try to get tacos in their presentations. And Pear Deck, one of the drawbacks I find is when you do draggables, the pictures are kind of bland. So if you just want to drag your taco over to there to what you're thinking so far about the tool, like I said, we've just scratched the surface, I think, on what it can be used for in our discussion and in our pre-work. There's a ton out there. We'll have a few minutes that looks like left here at the end to maybe just get out of Pear Deck and go to the polypad itself and look around in Mathigon itself. Outside the polypad, there's a ton of things. You could get lost for days on this. I think you could do a whole 2-day PD on this and still have a lot of questions or a lot of wonderings about what you might use it for. But after we've seen what we've seen so far, just kind of curious if this is a perfect fit. I think I can use this. Maybe want to explore it more, or hey, this was great, but some of those other ones with more bells and whistles that are more my speed.
While people are doing this, in fact, John, you're using Pear Deck, and you mentioned Angela Barnett, who's one of our presenters. She's also one of the third chat moderators. She's the one that got me onto the whole Pear Deck thing. And one of the favorite things I like for in class, but also presentations with this, is you as the presenter can display what everybody's responses are. So it's a great way for like the visual polling, that types of thing. And it's just, Pear Deck is one of those tools. I know that's not the focus of what we're doing, but it's such a great tool for the upper grades that we kind of don't pay attention to most of the time. We kind of think about it as an elementary deal.
Yeah, I decided I was trying to go back and forth on this, whether to use Pear Deck or Jamboard to kind of do some of this manipulation. Jamboard's great. It has a limit of how many people, and it's a little wonky sometimes when several people are on. So I went ahead and did Pear Deck. I love Pear Deck. It's one that I got a free year trial. I had won that, and I'm still in the middle of that. And it's one that I'll pay for. I try to pay for as few tech tools as possible. We all like free, but Pear Deck is one that I would love to continue to have and use. Like you said, it's a little harder to do in the Zoom setting when I only have the one screen, but I can see usually I can see with Pear Deck, I can see everybody's answers without showing everybody their answer, everybody else's answer. And then you can actually highlight the ones you want. If there's a misconception that is popping up over and over, nobody knows who gave the answer unless they blurt out, oh, that's mine. But you can actually show misconceptions and kind of talk through those misconceptions there in real time. You can highlight answers that were really well done, if they had a great strategy, and you can do those things, or you can show everybody. So yeah, I would definitely suggest Pear Deck across all grade levels. I know in interacting with a few people on Twitter, there's actually people using it in the college level as well, because it is a very robust tool. Nearpod is another example, similar example to that one. But let's see kind of where everybody's falling. All right, so nobody's saying it's perfect fit, which I don't really think there's a perfect fit tool. It's the one that fits perfectly for what you're doing, but most people saying want to explore a bit more. I'm in that same boat. My taco would be right there with you. I've used this the last few years, probably the last 5 years. I've dabbled with polypad, and it was actually a tool that I used in 3rd grade a couple of years ago and then forgot a little bit about, and then Twitter brought it back up to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great tool. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff to explore. So I'm in that same kind of thought cloud you are, where there's definitely things in there, and they're adding lesson plans. I just saw a tweet, I think yesterday, about some of the lesson plans and ideas that they have that are being added to what they're doing. We'll open it up for final thoughts or questions. I'm actually going to go ahead and bring the polypad over, but is there anything that we didn't discuss that you're like, oh, let's take a look at that, or any other thoughts you wanted to share? Like I said, the room, kind of the brains behind all of this, I'm hoping.
So I see that there's lesson plans and things. Is this something like you can create a specific thing and share it with students, like it's already done or it's already there, and then they do what they're supposed to do with it? Obviously, I haven't played with that, but.
And I don't know 100% on that one. There are pre-made activities, like that's what we're seeing here, where the Polypad is one of those. There's other items as well, but I'm fairly sure, go back to Polypad, that you can kind of create it like the backgrounds or the templates of what you want them to do, and then have that. I don't have an account with them. I haven't signed in or created a free account, but from the little bit I played with it, it does look like there are things that are already pre-set up for you to use and manipulate, and then you could essentially share that out. The other way to do that would be to create it and then kind of send it as a picture. They wouldn't have the manipulation of it then, but to my knowledge, I think there are some of those things, and I think they're bringing more of that on online. Yeah, and feel free to unmute. In the chat, Johan asked to create icebreaker activities before starting class. Yep, would be something to do. I don't know if you're meaning Polypad or Pear Deck, but both actually could be used for that. Pear Deck has that built in. But this, I could see this Polypad also being used as an icebreaker. How to build your own which one doesn't belong, different graphs, different things. So both of those I think could be that way. There's that direct link to the activities page they have.
You know, Jen found one about introduction to Euclidean geometry, which is more of a late junior high school topic. And so the thing about it is with a lot of these tools, there is a community around them that pre-builds pieces, just like for us high school people, like the GeoGebras or oh my golly gracious, the graphing calculator program that I use all the, you know, the folks.
Desmos.
Yeah, it is Desmos. Okay, yeah. I'm getting Desmos and Doceri turned around. Yes, Desmos has their own preset activities. Each one of these programs has communities around them that builds these things and shares these things out. So, you know, once you have the tool, then the community can help fill in the blanks for a lot of things. One thing I also wanted to mention was with Pear Deck, for starters, we were talking about icebreakers. Pear Deck, because you can do the sliding scale or the where are you, it's great for introducing the SEL. I know as math teacher guy, I am not known as Mr. Touchy-Feely. You know, like I am not emotional guy, but it's easy enough for me to put, where are you at today? How are you feeling today? Is today an awesome day? You know, and it's easy enough to throw that one slide right at the beginning, and you can see if somebody is needing help, but not everybody has to see. They can answer without everybody seeing.
Yeah, I think too, thinking about a flipped classroom, if they did the pre-work at home, right after that SEL slide, you could actually have a slide for who has questions, so that again, you're seeing it, but nobody else is. Or so there's definitely different ways to use that Pear Deck to get data and information. I know Pear Deck has spent a lot of time creating already made slides for the SEL and that kind of stuff. I did not use any of that this past year, but I'm looking at it as a replacement. I had actually done a Google form that they checked in with every day, and I had to go in and get the data and like go to the spreadsheet, just a couple of extra clicks, whereas a Pear Deck in the morning would be just a one-stop shop.
John, I do want to let you know you have about a 5-minute notification, about
Sure.
six minutes maybe, before we kind of release for our passing period, so to speak. So this would be a great time for any last questions or any last thoughts or anything you want to share.
If you have anything, come off mic, mute, and just anything.
I would like to ask, so with this Mathigon Polypad, is it something like the kids would, like you would create a class and then they would log in, or is it just something like you just give them the link, they go to that website, they do it?
Yeah, more so the last ladder there where you would give them the link and they would go and do it and then they could download it, put it in anything. It doesn't have right now, as far as I know, it doesn't have the class feature that some of the other ones do. That was a draw for me during virtual because of the bandwidth and different issues we were having. But yeah, for this,
Right, yeah, I agree with that.
Polypad.
Sometimes too much for the class, like the class stuff is just too much to deal with.
Yeah, so this one you would just put a link in the chat or put it out in Google Classroom or whatever system you use, put the mathigon.org/polypad. And what I did with it, if we were doing the, I would say navigate to the probability one. I wish there was a way to link it directly to that. That would be nicer. But I would just in the direction say go to or click on probability, and then from there they were able to easily navigate and find. Like I said, I had third graders using this a couple years ago. I think this is something that, with a little bit of guidance, even kindergarten, first grade, could manipulate stuff on the polypad, and then like all the way up until to high school, college level. There's applications for it, but yeah, just give them that link and then a few instructions on what to do and how you want them to share their work afterwards.
Another
Yeah,
way.
I really,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No,
I
go
really
ahead.
liked when I went through like that geometry one. It makes you go like step by step. So like you have to finish the first stuff before going on to the next. I mean, it does have an option to skip it, but like I liked that it did that. And then it gave you down in the corner, it gave you like little clapping hands or a little meme or something that was like a kitty saying yay or whatever when you got it right, which was kind of cool. So it allowed you to kind of practice a little bit with the vocabulary that they had just talked about. So I thought that was nice to be just a tad interactive.
Yeah, and those, I haven't used that a lot. Like you can see, most of it's upper grade. It reminds me a little bit of Khan Academy in that
Yeah.
it has that walkthrough piece. One or two of these I've seen, I liked. It seemed a little cleaner. I know Khan Academy has been around for a long time, and but this seemed a little cleaner and easier to navigate than that. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, I struggle with Khan Academy because it takes so much bandwidth, and our schools that we're in, when I have a whole classroom on Khan Academy, it just is so buggy and it doesn't really work properly. So I've kind of gotten away from it.
Well, in my school, I don't. For our middle and high school, I don't think it's an issue. But in elementary, YouTube is blocked for students, and so anything that we couldn't do. So this is another. So they don't really have it for elementary, but it'd be another way to get a resource out there that they could actually use.
Right.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about is because this doesn't have necessarily the classroom component, but the thing is, like you mentioned, John, you're using Canvas. Many of us are using Google Classroom. Some people use Schoology or whatever it is. It is so easy to teach, because I did it this past year, kindergartners, first grade, how to take a screenshot. And then you just attach it to the Google Classroom or you submit it via Canvas. And so especially at the middle school, high school level, taking a screenshot and submitting it into your Canvas assignment, easy peasy. And so they can make all sorts of creations independently and then just submit. And so that way it dumps into the tracking system you're already using, which is good. By the way, for anybody that's in the elementary that YouTube is blocked, or in any school that YouTube is blocked, easy way around that one, use Edpuzzle. You drop the YouTube link in Edpuzzle and it launders the YouTube video such that it'll be accessible to anybody that has Edpuzzle available. So it's only teacher chosen videos. So if you're not familiar with Edpuzzle, look into that. You can add questions to it or whatever. But one of the best features is it allows people to access any YouTube through Edpuzzle because it basically overlays it. It also means you don't get commercials and the stuff that YouTube suggests at the end that can be very inappropriate at times.
I'm gonna have to bring that up with my tech department then, because they had Edpuzzle blocked as well. So, but I'm glad you mentioned that. I've been trying to get Edpuzzle for a while.
I like Edpuzzle a lot, but one thing that I have noticed when I assign Edpuzzles, I will have a few students that just say that they cannot access it. And it turns out that most of the time it's from people using Android cell phones. So I don't know, maybe in the past year, we didn't use it a lot this year, but maybe they've updated and got that bug fixed. But I know that was an issue because I would have kids because we didn't have one-to-one, so people were using cell phones or whatever they could to get that instruction, and they would tell me that they can't get to it from their phone, and then people with iPhones had no problem.
Never hesitate to email Edpuzzle support. They have, I don't know how many they have on staff right now, but they're a fairly small team, and they will get right back to you. They are awesome about that. So never hesitate. I mean, you don't have to have Kim on speed dial, the CEO. They'll get back to you, you know.
Okay.
So they any question like that, and they are super big on making sure it works.
Okay. I'll do that next time.
Well, I want to thank.
Right. Well,
I know we're wrapping.
thank you so much. If anybody has any more questions, you can hang around here for a few minutes. I do actually have to hop over and load the next thing up, so this meeting will end here in just a few minutes. But any last thoughts? It's time for those. Make sure you check for the schedule to make sure you know exactly what's coming up next in the next session. Join us for the rest of the day, and then we'll have another session yet this morning. Then we'll pick it up at 4 p.m. Central Time this evening, and we have Ed Camp tonight. So make sure that if you haven't seen something you want to talk about, just like we were doing a minute ago, surely somebody knows in this group. So John, any last thoughts?
Just want to thank everybody for coming. I hope it's a tool that you can look at and say, well, maybe I can use that. The goal of it was just to kind of introduce it, and saw in chat a few people saying that they are interested in learning more about it. So if you do use it, you find that it's something that becomes useful and you want to shout out to me, I am on Twitter. So you can always hit me up there and let me know how it turned out for you. But appreciate you coming. I appreciate the opportunity to present for FlipTech.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Looks good. I'm going to